Thought I'd try this again today. This topic usually tends to make everybody mad. I usually receive a lot of hate when I talk about this subject. Bacteria disproves evolution. I don't know why so many people get so upset with this topic, but man, they do. Check my settings here. Good to go. So I take the viewpoint that evolution is absolutely probably the dumbest religion ever made. And that's my viewpoint. Evolution doesn't happen, didn't happen, no way that it can happen, and I believe that bacteria itself disproves evolution. So that's the topic today. So hey, look, if you disagree or you agree, want to have a good conversation, step up, let's talk about it. If you believe that evolution is true, and the topic being, then, why can't we see it in bacteria? Why can't we see it in a bacterium that can have up to 9 generations in a single day? Within our lifetime, we can simulate millions of years of evolution that had to occur in humans, but we can't see that in the simplest life forms of bacteria. So why is that the case? Why is it that it takes so long for bacteria to evolve into something more complex? But when we have something that is way more complex, like a monkey, it doesn't take that long for it to evolve into a human. So obviously I take the viewpoint that evolution is utterly false and could not produce any of the complexity that we see today. If you disagree or want to have a conversation, step up. And let's see where it goes. I was in a room earlier. I like to control my own room. I went into a room earlier. Wow. What's going on? How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How old are you?
I'm 43.
All right. And what's your stance? You believe in evolution?
Yeah, I do. I think it's pretty compelling evidence.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, in bacteria evidence, for example, like E. coli bacteria, we can see 9 generations in a single day. Why do we never see them have any type of information gained?
When you say information gained, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think if we boil down, and I don't mind defining our terms, but I will say this. I've had this debate a lot, and a lot of people just want to get stuck on terms. I think if you boil it down to the simplest form of evolution, right, you have to have some kind of genetic information gain. It has to be genetic because you have to be able to pass it on to your children. It has to be some type of, information. If it doesn't contain information, then it doesn't really do anything. So, and it has to be gained, right?
So are you talking about like mutations? Like is a mutation of bacteria, does that count as information gained in your worldview or not?
Well, I mean, you could make that argument, but you would have to show me how eventually that mutation became information. Right?
So I guess I'm not sure how information is required for evolution.
Well, because if you have a mutation and it doesn't do anything, it doesn't contain any information, then we would call that like either a cancer or something that's useless. If I have like a spot on my arm that eventually turns into an arm, there is a point where that stopped becoming useless and it became a functioning part of the body that contained information, right? I would agree that DNA contains information, right?
Yeah, I'm not unclear when you say information. Like, is a bacteria becoming, let's say, resistant to a certain chemical? Is that mutation called new information? Are you considering that new information?
Okay, that's a great question. We can go down that route. So the theory goes, if it faced a new threat, right? Imagine that it faced a new threat that it didn't face before, and like you said, becoming resistant to antibiotics, right?
Yeah, like the flu changes every year, right? Like the flu strain that we get, like if you get a flu vaccine or flu jab, whatever you call it, that formula that you get in 2025 is going to be different than it was in 2024. It's going to be different than 2023. Like it changes every year, right?
Right. So I think that is a great way for us to define and see if it is evolution. So we know that bacteria has become resistant to antibiotics. So here's the question about whether it's gaining information or losing it. Okay. So the theory goes that the bacteria started to face a new threat that it never faced before in the invention of antibiotics, right? So then it evolved a new way of fighting this antibiotics. That would be evolution. It gained some type of information to make it silly and simple. And obviously, I know this is not your word, but just for the audience sakes, to make it really simple, I'm handcuffed and my body evolves, a pair of bolt cutters that grows out of my back and cuts it out. That's, I had new material that come in that evolved a way to fight the threat of handcuffs, right? So if the bacteria gained information in an effort to fight this bacteria, to fight the antibiotics, that would be information gain. I would concede that.
Okay. So the fact that there are like multiple strains of the flu virus, is that proof of evolution or evidence for evolution or not?
Well, so I'm glad you asked. I need to define my terms real. So I do believe in microevolution. That's not gaining any type
So
of
you do
information.
believe in evolution. You just don't believe on it in a grand scale, but you do think that like there are mutations, right? And
There's changes within the same kind that never produce, and it almost always results in a loss of genetic information. For example,
when does it not?
Say it again.
When does it not?
Exactly. That's my point. So it started off as a wolf, and then you can breed it down to a Chihuahua. That's not evolution in the grand scale of things because it's lesser. It's lost information.
Do you think all Chihuahuas came from what was once a wolf?
Yes, probably there's some kind of dog.
So then you believe in evolution.
That's why I said we got to define our terms, because if you want to say that if you want to make that leap saying, hey, we can breed dogs and we can take a trait that already existed, we can isolate that trait and we can encourage that trait. So therefore we all come from a dot of nothing 65 million, billion, trillion years ago. You've just made a huge leap in logic that I'm not willing to follow.
Well, I wouldn't say million, billion, trillion years ago.
You just kind of alluded that because I believe in microevolution, you're like, oh, you do believe in evolution.
Well, you do, right? Like you believe that Chihuahuas used to be wolves, right? Like that's evolution. You believe that all cats are related, right?
Right.
Like lions and leopards and tigers, they all are all cats, right?
Okay, let me ask you a question. Are cats related to a banana?
Very, very, very distantly, yes. In my world,
Yes.
yeah.
That's where I draw the line. See, I believe in microevolution, which is changes within the same kind that's already written in the genetic code. I agree with that.
How
But
do you
that's
define
where-
a kind?
Divine species? Yeah, this is the old.
Well,
thing.
no. We can't use species because we know lions and tigers are different species, but they're in the same kind according to
Exactly.
the
We're-
world, right?
My point is we're
So you
both.
can't say species, right?
Guys, this is what I told you earlier, and this is what, and again, no disrespect, but this is what I get out of people that believe this all the time. We get stuck on an argument of definitions, right?
Okay, so what do you mean by kind?
If they can produce the same, like a cat kind, dog kind, if they're the same kind of animal, right? Whatever the original.
Right,
kind
but you're not
of
giving a
dog.
definition, you're giving examples. Like, give me a definition of kind.
Bring forth.
What?
They can mate and bring forth.
Bring forth. So if a human and a monkey could mate and produce an offspring, they would be of the same kind, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you think that monkeys and gorillas can mate and bring forth this? Are monkeys and gorillas of the same kind?
It depends on what kind of monkeys you're talking about, but I don't think so.
So, a monkey and a gorilla are not of the same kind. What separates them?
I can't tell you that's my point. I can't tell you every single time, every single kind. Like for example, there is a Canadian rabbit, there is an American rabbit, and then there is a Mexican rabbit, right? And because they've diversed far enough from each other, the Canadian rabbit cannot mate with the Mexican rabbit because it doesn't happen anymore. They're still the same kind of animal, but because now they're genetically different, but they can still both mate with the American rabbit. So
they are the same kind, or they're not the same kind. They can bring forth, or they can't bring forth, right?
They can still bring forth, and it's still a rabbit.
So even though they can't mate, they can mate. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically, kind of roundabout. Yeah.
Oh, so that's a contradiction. So you believe in nonsense. I'll let you go.
I laid it that they could still mate with the American rabbit, and he's gone. Yeah, that's way to go, punch and run. This is what evolutionists always do, guys. They always show you an example of losing information, and then they want to debate a definition the whole time. They never want to get into the evidence. They always want to show you how information is lost, and then they want to claim, so therefore it's true. So let me play this like we're a teacher, and Ramp, I'll get you right here. Let me play this out. I'm a teacher.
Okay.
Little Johnny comes and asks me a question. Teacher. Go ahead, little Johnny. Teacher, how did we all get here? Well, little Johnny, we all started off as a single-celled organism. Thank you, teacher. Then how did it work after that? Well, we lost all of our genetic information, and that's how we become humans. It's stupid. You got to give me an example of genetic information gain.
Yeah, okay, we have examples of, I forget the exact term off the top of my head, but it's like DNA duplication where entire strands are duplicated and added on. I think it's the Dachshund or some kind of dog breed got the super small legs, and how I think some kind of species of snakes got his poison, if I remember correctly. So do you have evidence against that?
Okay, so I'm sorry. Say it again. I kind of walked on the first part of that by asking you how you're doing it.
It's DNA, like again, I can't remember the term, and if I go out to look in Google on my phone, it mutes me. But DNA duplication, it's where whenever that's forgetting the exact term, but whenever the entire strands of DNA are duplicated and added back onto the genome.
Okay, and what is this supposed to do?
I mean, it's adding information. It's literally duplicating the existing DNA, adding information, which gets it more ability to produce more phenotypes.
Okay, but did you hear what you said? It took information that was already there and just duplicated it. That's not adding new information. It's adding existing information.
But it literally is adding more information, though.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's children sometimes that are born with 3 arms. They have a lot more information, but it's nothing new.
And if that 3 arms allows them to do something better than their peers, then they get selected for more.
But does that ever happen? You ever see a 3-armed kid that has an up on anybody, or does it always cause
I mean, again, like the examples I just gave you, where if it's something artificial selection and then allows the dogs to have extremely short legs, then it gets selected for. If it allows for previous saliva to become poisonous, then it definitely gets selected for.
I don't know about the saliva becoming poisonous. I haven't looked.
Again, I need to research it more, but that's the last one I've watched.
Heard that one. I think that one's already there, and that's their theory about how it became poisonous. I don't think that they're showing you that this is. They can't replicate it and show you this is what it is. They just.
I mean, well, the reason that they say it is because they literally have the genes of the animal, and they can say, "Hey, this gene sequence produces this sequence of proteins, and this proteins causes this result." So you saying
that's my point.
Hey,
if they have it, here's my point. Okay, I concede microevolution. That's true. That's written within the genetic code. We can see that. We can test that. That's part of science. All of the other forms of evolution is not part of science. You can't test it. You can't observe it. You can't see it. In fact, when you try to do give me an example. Yeah,
the example of cetacean of was it cetacean? the dolphin evolution, we have examples of the different species of species going from more horse-like species to more whale-like. And we literally see the nose holes moving up along the skull
Okay, so let me
until we get to whales and dolphins, etc.
I got you. So here's what, and I hope you don't. I'm not trying to. Don't take this as insulting because I'm not trying to insult. What they've done is they've taken animals and shapes, and then they've put these animals in line and said, "Hey, because this one has a nose that's more forward facing, and this one has a nose that's more up facing, then therefore it must have evolved." That's just shapes of bones, and you cannot use bones in any type of evidence for evolution.
That's false. You can literally look at an animal's bones and then see how closely it is related to another
Here,
bones.
I'm
That's
gonna
that's
make a- I'm
that's
gonna
part of
make-
the entire. That's one of the most important parts of archaeology. You can literally.
I know. Hold
So-
on one second, Ron. I'll
Host,
get
can
to
I
the
ask you a
lead.
question real
Yeah,
quick?
you can right after I ask him this question. Once he answers, I'll move.
Oh,
quickly,
okay. Sorry about that.
You're
Sorry
fine.
about
You're fine. I just it gets confusing when everybody talks. Okay, so the reason why bones cannot count is because you have to think about it logically. You cannot prove that that bone had children at all, and then you would have to prove that that bone had children that were eventually of a different kind, which you can't prove. I can take different shapes.
You actually can prove that.
No, you cannot.
Yep.
You cannot prove that.
Yes, you
bones
can.
So I would just say, first of all, you're
How did the bone get
using
there?
terms which you just admitted that don't make sense, which again do not make sense and are not accepted by any sort of scientific
The dolphin.
facility.
I don't care if a million people. All the scientific community once thought the world was flat. It doesn't. Make sense. That's an argument from authority.
No, they
I don't
do
care
not.
what they think. Okay, but here's my point. I'm going to say that all of those dolphins that you're lining up in a row, they didn't have any children. They died. Prove me wrong.
That's really easy to do. How did the dolphin get there?
How did that dolphin get there? It died there.
No, how does a dolphin existing happen?
Hold on one second, Planet. I promise you I'll get to you, but I told Ron that I would give him the next word, and then I'll run back to you. Go ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry. When I came in, I had just came in. Y'all was already talking, and you probably went over it. But I just wanted to know exactly what you were saying when you said bacteria disproves how exactly. And like I said, I know I'm probably late to the conversation, so you probably explained it. So I'm sorry.
We've done long-running experiments. Matter of fact, the longest-running evolutionary experiment is on E. coli bacteria, and every time we get lesser genetic information off, it's losing.
That's 100% false.
No,
Where
it's
did you?
not.
Who told you that?
The experiments themselves, they lost their flagellum. They lost the genetic switch that
They
allowed.
gained the ability to metabolate citrate in the absence of oxygen,
Ooh, could they
or in the
eat-
presence of oxygen,
Let me
actually.
ask you a question.
Because you were there, right?
Could
You were
they-
there and you saw it.
Okay. Could they eat citrate before?
Not if there was oxygen present.
Didn't have- I know. So let me go ahead and put it like this, okay? A regular E. coli bacteria has a flagellum. It has a little tail that allows it to swim. It eats glucose in the presence of oxygen. When there's
Citrate.
no it's citrate and oxygen and glucose and no oxygen. I think you have that backwards. I think it's oxygen. When there's oxygen present, it eats glucose. Just like oxygen inside of the lab.
I know
fed
that,
glucose.
yeah.
That's what I just said. Okay. So
Well,
it
you're
has-
getting this wrong because citrate is the new.
okay,
I guess you need to let him finish, man.
If you'll let me finish, you'll apologize for saying I was wrong. Because at first I'm just telling you what the normal wild E. coli bacteria out here in the planet has. A regular normal E. coli bacteria has a flagellum. It swims. Okay. When there's oxygen present, it eats glucose. When there's no oxygen present, like it's inside your colon or something like that, there's like a genetic switch that allows the transfer of proteins to allow in a different shape, which would be citrus. Okay. And then it has ability to eat two food sources in two oxygenated environment and unoxygenated environment, right? So it has a flagellum, it eats glucose and oxygen, and it eats citrate when there's no oxygen. Now, when they put these bacteria inside of this lab, inside of a flask, and hand fed it, it lost its flagellum. It no longer has a flagellum. It also lost the ability. It already could eat citrate. It already could eat it, but it started to eat citrate in the presence of oxygen and no longer eats glucose. So now we
Yep,
take
that's a
glucose,
new
So
function.
now it has the ability to eat citrate in two environments. Tell me which
Yep.
one's evolving. The natural one that has all the abilities.
If it
one that has
changed,
all
it
the
evolved.
abilities.
That's what it means to evolve.
Yeah, with
Okay,
wings,
yeah,
right?
This is like saying if an organism like a bat, it has wings, but that's not something new because its wings are just modified arms. No, it didn't have wings before, and now it does. So it clearly evolved.
And you were there when they didn't have wings.
But it
And I'm seeing zero data that says they lost their flagella. Do you have a source for that?
yeah, it's actually in the scientific.
That's what I
paper.
was about to say. When they lost their flagella, was it because they found the need not to use it anymore, so they used that?
It's not that they. It's
I mean,
not that they.
evolution.
Losing your flagella is evolving, by the way.
Guys, listen, hold on, one at a time. I don't want to mute anybody, but I've been part of panels where it's everybody's talking at one time and it gets confusing. I'm back playing through somebody's stuff. So they didn't just find the need.
That's me. Hold on.
They were
That's me.
they were hand fed, so they didn't need to swim to get their food anymore. And that's an example. And what you just did is exactly what I claimed evolutionists do every time. You show me an example of it losing information and then claiming that that's evolution.
It didn't lose information.
It can't eat glucose in oxygen anymore. It doesn't have a flagella.
Because it doesn't need to
That's
survive in
not
that type
true.
of
Where did you
environment.
hear that they can't eat oxygen?
If you can say that it doesn't need it anymore, you're still showing me an example of it losing information and claiming that's how we all got here.
What do you think losing information means?
What do you think you losing information? It's pretty self-evident when I just showed you it lost its
Does
flagellum.
it-
And it lost the ability
A flagellum
to eat
is not information. So what do you think information is?
Okay, listen.
That's a fallacious
We're
argument.
going straight back to the definition. You can't win on the example, then we go to the definition. It lost information, however you want to define. I don't care how you define it. It lost its flagellum, and it no longer has the ability to eat glucose. It's not getting better. It's getting
They
worse.
didn't lose the ability to eat glucose. I don't know why you're saying that. They gained the ability to eat citrate in a new kind of environment, but they can still metabolize glucose.
Yeah, but it only eats citrate now. According
That's
to them.
not true.
But still,
I've read these studies before. So,
I think you read them pretty good because you don't know the flagellum's gone.
I have not seen a single source that says that. If that's true, then that's interesting that the bacteria evolved to no longer have a flagella. That's not a problem for evolution.
Yeah, of course. You can
Are
just
you
keep-
aware that humans have multiple copies of certain genes?
Okay.
Okay, so that's a gain in information.
No, it's existing information that's just copied.
If it's copied, that means that we gained new information, right?
So if I,
That's
if
the
I
exact
grow-
point I made.
If I grow another arm, have I gained information?
Yes.
No, the genetic code is already there. It just duplicated. I didn't create
A
new
duplicated part of your genetic code is new information. Added information is new information.
No, it's
In
not
fact,
new. It's
subtracted information is new information. So I can prove this to you very easily, host. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
If I take a sentence and I remove one of the words, does the sentence now have a different meaning?
It could. Depends.
So that's new information. The information is different than it was before. So the new sentence contains information the old sentence didn't. That's new information. And it would also work that way if you added words to a sentence. Both of those things happen with genetics.
Now, look, I know that we're not going to agree. I get that. And I enjoy the conversation and I appreciate it. But I want for everybody else that's listening in the comments, I called it ahead of time, and this is what I say all the time. You have nothing but loss of information, and then you claim. So I'll go back to my
No, we
original-
have duplicated genes, many of them.
Can you let
all
him finish?
here
Come
from
on,
a
come
single-celled
on. Then you'll have your
organism.
opportunity to let him
When he
finish.
says something that's wrong, I'm going to butt in. Sorry.
Well, if you don't like it, you can leave.
Yeah, hold on, guys. This is my live. I don't mind a little going back and forth. That doesn't hurt my feelings. If I need to, I'll mute people. I don't mind that. But it goes back to my original. This is why I said they fight so hard over definitions, because they want to be able to claim that all we can see, part of science, observe, test. All we can test and observe is stuff losing information, but we can't get rid of our religion of evolution. So how did we all get here, teacher? Well, little Johnny, we all started off as a single-celled organism. And then
Yeah, that's
what
been
happened?
proven,
We
by the
all
way.
lost information, and that's how we become humans. You got to show me gain.
We've shown you
We have
multiple
duplicated
examples of
duplicated
organisms
genes. Yeah,
getting new genetic information.
Okay, if I
this is
have,
well known.
if I have DNA that duplicates and creates another arm, right? And you say
That's
that's
new
new
information.
will it ever be anything other than an arm?
Yeah, so this is actually also known. So, you know, crustaceans, they have like a whole bunch of legs, but their front legs are these big pincers.
Okay.
So we now know, thanks to doing genetic sequencing, that you take like, because they're a type of arthropod, insects, crustaceans, spiders, arachnids, all those things. So what we now know is insects all have 6 legs, 3 pairs. Crustaceans have 5 pairs. Most of those pairs are basically identical to each other, and then the frontmost pairs are very highly modified. We now know that they have duplicate copies of the Hox genes that code for creating those legs. So because they have extra copies of those genes, they grow extra legs, but now the front legs have been modified into completely different structures. They're not used for locomotion, they're used for doing whatever the hell crabs do. So that's one example.
Well, just let me tell you something that you're saying is mathematical impossibility because the flagellum requires 40 to 50 coordinated proteins.
Yeah,
Probably,
but we've actually
I
deleted
haven't
pieces of the
finished.
flagellum and it still
I haven't
works.
finished.
So your
Listen,
irreducible
I haven't finished.
complexity
Let me finish.
argument is scientifically
let me
proven to be
finish.
false.
Let me finish. Hey, I can also speak.
I already know where you're going.
I also speak. I also can speak.
Let him get it out for the audience, okay? Bro?
Okay, probability of even one average size protein, which is 300 amino acids, forming by chances, is equal 1 in 10,000 exponential. So it's impossible.
One in 10,064
It's impossible.
exponential. That's an incredibly made up
It's
statistic you just did there.
impossible.
And it's extremely
It's
telling how you
impossible.
changed the subject when your
It is
irreducible complexity
impossible.
argument.
It
Yeah.
is
What are the
impossible.
odds that a magic man
It
in the
is
sky did it?
impossible.
Hold on, wait a minute. Let's
It is
let me-
impossible.
Right. So I take your
Yeah,
concession.
keep
You
it.
changed the subject because you
So
got
much
absolutely
faith.
destroyed on that.
So much
on.
faith.
That's
Guys,
fine.
both of you,
Impossible,
I'm
man.
gonna
You're
mute-
just
I'm gonna mute
you believe in the
Okay, hold on, just a second, and you run away. You don't got to do that, man. You got to hit and run. So your example of the legs. Okay, I would
Yep.
just simply say that's design. It has the same genetic information as legs for a good part of it because the majority of it is a leg, right?
So,
it has
yeah,
the
but they
same-
get mutated to the point where they become something totally different. This is how
can't-
a bat's wing is. Like, if we look at the homologous structure, a bat's wing is just an arm with extremely long webbed fingers, right?
I know
But
you
nobody
believe
thinks that a bat's wing is the same thing as the arms that whatever the ancestor of bats before it was flying. Nobody would say they're the same thing. Evolution is descent with modification. Evolution doesn't work in a way where an organism gives birth and the organism it gave birth to is completely different and has features that have never been seen before. It can only modify pre-existing physical structures or genetic structures.
If a dog comes from a single-celled organism, I think you would agree that eventually it would have to be something that is non-dog and something that is single-celled organism, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't happen one day.
I know, I agree with that, but the fact that this is what you can never tie down people because you have what we like to refer to as the god of gaps. Anytime you can't test or observe or see it, you just sprinkle some time on it.
We can test it.
Okay, well then show me how you can test it because the laboratory
If
experiment.
if dogs are related to bacteria, if dogs or if evolution, like life started off as bacteria and then became what we see today,
Yeah,
that's
give me-
testable and it's been proven like countless times.
Okay, I must have missed it. Tell me how it's proven.
So remember, I wasn't up here, but I was listening. You were talking about cats are all cats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's because you test their genes, right?
Okay.
Okay, so if they share genes, they're part of the same family. If they share fewer genes, they're still related, but they're not exactly part of the same, not necessarily part of the same group. Well, the fact is, all life on the planet does share genes, so that means all life on the planet is related.
I don't buy that definition. I think that's still more.
That's
common.
literally what it means to be related to something, though. It's how you decide whether or not a cat is a cat. You look at its genes. There are things that look just like cats but aren't cats because their genetics are too different.
Yeah, I would say that's common design. I would not say that we've never seen or tested or observed that. That's what your claim was.
Well, evolution was the field that predicted that all life should be related. And then way later, we learned how to actually test that. And then it came true. Intelligent design was something that you guys came up with after evolution was proven, but you wanted to maintain your belief. So then you just said, well, actually, a magic man in the sky did that. There's no test for that.
Right, and I'm not claiming that. So that you're trying to bring that in like you claimed the other brother did was running away from it. I haven't brought up religion once, only to answer your question about it. I haven't brought up religion. You have. The claim is about evolution, and you keep bringing up.
You brought
religion.
up design.
Yes, that's the viewpoint exactly. But I haven't brought up a religion, right? I just said I think that's a design. Absolutely.
Well, intelligent design is, I mean, it's not. It in itself isn't a religion, but it's a theological solution to the problem of evolution's been proven very rigorously, and now we have to figure out what to do about that.
And that's just a statement. It's not been proven. Like I said, you can't.
I just showed it to you how it is proven, though.
Hey, you know the stuff that makes up life?
Yeah.
Those things are also in other life. That's do you know that I can take the tires off of a Ford and put them on a Chevy and they fit just fine? It didn't evolve. It's common design.
The difference is so what. It sounds like I'm changing subject, but I'm not. What's actually really crazy about this is like the way I argued to you, evolution works and how you would prove it. I promise you actually believe essentially the exact same thing happens. Has happened in history, actually. Because you believe in the flood, right?
Yeah.
So the flood would require a few thousand species to turn into millions of species. Meaning the thing that you think can't happen, a change in kind, had to have happened, and literally in a manner of only a few years. Maybe a few decades or centuries.
No, I believe that the dog kind that come off still produce dogs. I don't believe that that any of the animals become something other than their own kind.
Yeah, but you said earlier a kind is something that can mate and produce offspring, right?
I get kicked. This is again another thing that I predicted is we keep going down these definition loopholes to where you try to win by definition.
Well, what I'm doing is proving that what you say is the limitation. You believe in a violation of that limitation.
No, I don't. I believe that.
No, you 100% do. So what is a family? Because I promise you, in order for the flood you believe in to have happened, a change in kind has to happen. It absolutely has to happen.
No, it absolutely doesn't. But let me.
It does, and I can prove it. So what is a family?
See, there we go. Now we're going right back on definitions again. So let me ask you this right here. Let's get back on topic. We're talking about the bacteria. Why is it? How long did it take for monkey evolution or whatever to go into man evolution? It's about
monkey to man. I thought you said we were talking about bacteria.
I am. And if you'll answer the question, I promise you, I'll show you how it fits.
Monkeys aren't bacteria, though. Do you want me to answer the monkey question?
Okay.
Hey guys, how's it going?
I won't pose it as a question. I'll just make the statement then. Okay. That way you'll be able to follow. Okay. So in monkey to man evolution, at least last time I looked at it, it was roughly about 90,000 generations or something like that, which is a million, 2 million or something years of evolution that we went from evidently a tree dwelling monkey into humans. So why is it?
You're nowhere close with
that's last
that.
time I looked at it. What is it? How many years of evolution did it take for monkeys to go into man?
So it depends what you mean by monkey, because so we're apes. An ape taxonomically is a type of monkey, but no, Ardipithecus is like 5 million years old, and Ardipithecus was almost certainly in the trees quite a lot. Ardipithecus is in our lineage, so a million years. No, there were. Only a million years ago, we had Homo erectus, and Homo erectus is only 2 ancestors back. Nobody would call Homo erectus a monkey. It was an upright walking tool using species of human.
Here's my point about the bacteria. We have replicated 2 million years or a million and some change through what would be human evolution through the bacteria because we can have 9 generations in a single day, and we've done it for 40 years. So why is it that in a million years or 2 million, whatever it is, it's in the millions, I can't remember the exact one, that we've had of this simulated evolution, why is it not produced anything other than worse off bacteria?
Well, they're not worse off. They're extremely good at surviving in their environment. For example, that bacteria that can digest citrate, it now has access to a food source more readily than its ancestors did. So it literally has better fitness. And actually, if you want to know if it's being successful, that's what you do. You track fitness, and we see fitness increasing in these experiments all the time.
No, that right there is absolutely horribly false. That's not true at all.
I literally wrote a book about this. I can tell you about compensatory mutations.
When you see the bacteria that become resistant to antibiotics, what they do is they increase that trait so that they become super resistant and super resistant and super resistant and make it stronger. And then when you put them back into the population of regular bacteria, what happens to them if you wrote the book? Does that trait continue, or do they die out?
You're talking about when you add bacteria that have resistance and then you mix them with regular bacteria?
I'm asking a very simple question now that it seems that since you wrote a book that you're deliberately trying to avoid. So I'll ask it again. In the bacteria experiments where they have bacteria that are resistant to the antibiotics, and that you can see this on the table, and then they put a stronger antibiotic on the table, and then the bacteria grows into that, and it's encouraging that trait of super resistance to antibiotics. Then when they take that thing at the end of the table, when it becomes the super strongest in the resistant to the antibiotics, and they put it back into the regular population of bacteria, what happens to it?
I don't know. Go ahead and tell me. I've never heard of this.
Out. It doesn't survive like the other ones. You know, and I can tell you why. Is because you've taken that trait and you've isolated that trait. You've encouraged that trait while all the other traits went down. And your thing that said, well, we go on.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about now.
E. coli bacteria in the lab and put them on the table, and as long as humans aren't there to feed them, they die out because they's lost their flagellum.
So, no. First of all, second of all, will you allow me to read a paragraph about compensatory mutations?
Yeah, you can read it.
Okay, it should only take me like a minute. Scientists have studied salmonella bacteria that were resistant to streptomycin, but at the cost of reduced ability to assemble proteins. This decreased their fitness as a measure by the rate of reproduction. That is, these bacteria have lower rates of reproduction than others in the absence of antibiotics. This is exactly what you were just talking about. In the presence of antibiotics, these bacteria have much greater fitness because others die off. Scientists then allowed the bacteria to multiply, which they are prolific at. Small genetic changes happen every generation, and the scientists waited to see if the bacteria could regain their original fitness while still maintaining resistance to streptomycin. That's exactly what happened. Of the 81 separate lineages, 77 maintained resistance to streptomycin and increased in their fitness. So the thing you're talking about is, they become resistant, but they put all their eggs in one basket and then they can't compete with the other members of their group. That can happen, but literally we've done the experiment and 90% of them, or whatever that is, actually end up outcompeting their members or whatever, and they maintain their fitness. And the experiment for that...
So I'm a little familiar with one. I don't know if you're naming a specific study. So some of the bacteria.
I've got the name of it if you want it.
Right. So some of the bacteria are able to start mating with the normal, like the super strong bacteria. When they put it back into the normal population, they are able to produce offspring. I understand that, and those offspring do have some of the traits, but it's not at the same level. And the bacteria they're super strong in it do not maintain at that same level. They don't create more super bacteria.
I just read you the study, and in 77 of the 81 lineages, they ended up reaching their same level of fitness.
Of fitness, right? Fitness.
So if you have two populations, the one that has greater fitness is the one that reproduces more, so it can outcompete the other. But what happened is they found that they regained their fitness in 77 of the 81 cases.
You gotta listen to the semantic wording there. When they say they regained their fitness, that means that they went back to the way that they basically was, because the normal population had the fitness in it to begin with.
Yeah, but now they're also resistant to antibiotics. So not only are they as good as they were with the original population, if you introduce the antibiotics, they're far better even. So it started off, they were only more successful if you add the streptomycin. And then what happened is they became equal even in the absence of streptomycin.
Right, but we would agree. I think you might know this already. I haven't brought this up, but the resistance to the antibiotic predated the antibiotic. So when they put them back into the normal populations, the only ones that were allowed to live during the experiment was the ones that already had the resistance. So when they put them back into the population, they're taking a trait that already existed and then they're mating that. So yeah, it's still in the population. They didn't gain any new information, and they're not superior than the original population, and that's exactly the semantic words that you're
But they
using.
are superior.
I don't. That's
They're
what
they have more antibiotic resistance. That's absolutely beneficial.
no. Did the
No.
antibiotic resistance predate it, or did it evolve from it?
I'm not aware if these bacteria went from having no antibiotic resistance at all to streptomycin to having some, because we can genetically engineer bacteria with that. I'm not aware if they had none of it and then it was like inserted with CRISPR, or if they always had it, these were just the strongest ones or not.
Right. So the gene or I don't want to say gene, because I've actually I can't remember what it was, but it does it through information loss. So the whatever that the antibiotic attaches to it no longer allows. The same thing for like the poison resistance in the cockroach. Whatever the gene is that the poison attaches to, that it kills the cockroach, it's lost that ability. So it didn't necessarily become resistant. It just lost that ability for that poison to attach. Same thing with the antibiotic. The resistance predated the antibiotic, so it did not evolve from the antibiotic. We know this because you can find it in permafrost. I mean, I don't know why you're laughing.
Because we went over this, evolution is descent with modification.
Okay, so I'll ask you again. Did the antibiotic evolve a new way of fighting the bacteria, evolve a new way of fighting the antibiotic? Or did the antibiotic just happen to kill every single one of the bacteria that didn't already have it? It predated.
In this specific case, I don't know what gives them the resistance, if they're peptidoglycan or whatever, the carbohydrate and protein receptors on the surface of the cell. I don't know if like it was changes in that made them more resistant, so that the antibodies or whatever couldn't bind to them. I don't know exactly how they had their better levels of resistance. It usually comes in some form of that, because an antibiotic has to attach to a bacteria in order to attack it.
There you go. That's what I said, and I can't remember the name of it that it lost, that it can no longer attach. But it did not gain a new ability to fight it. It lost the ability for it to attach. So it's superior, it's not superior. It's inferior than the original bacteria.
It's so not inferior. It has the same fitness, and it is resistant to an antibiotic. It's resistant to something that tries to kill it. But if we go with your thing about, well, this isn't even a new trait, we can absolutely do a new trait if you want.
In this very specific outline, you said that it is superior in this very specific thing that we've made. So let me give you a scenario with the exact same logic, and I promise you this is the same logic. And so that I won't seem like this super racist person, I'll make up a new race of people called the purple people, right? And in my world, we have laws just like science has laws. And all the other races get together and we say, hey, you know what? We don't want these purple people around anymore. How are we going to get rid of them? So we say, you know what? Here's the laws. You have to go arrest every purple male, put them in handcuffs, throw them in the back of a paddy wagon, send them to jail. They can no longer reproduce. The only people that can reproduce with the purple females will be the other races, and eventually, if you keep getting rid of the purple males, the purple race itself will come out of existence, because they're not going to be able to carry on, right? So we go and get all the purple males, But guess what? One purple male was born and he doesn't have any arms. So we can't handcuff him. That's the law, right? We don't have anything for the handcuffs to attach to. So that purple male gets to live. Now, he can still mate. There's nothing wrong with his reproductive system. And now he seems super strong in front of all these purple ladies because he's the only purple male left. Next thing you know, this, just to make the math simple, this purple male gets with this purple female and he has 10 babies, right? He has 5 boys and 5 girls, right? And 5 of those boys get the no arm trait from him. They don't have the ability to grow arms. So a couple of those boys don't have arms. The rest of them do. They come and get the ones that have arms and they arrest them, throw them in a paddy wagon, right? Well, there's nothing wrong with the girls. They get to stay there whether they have arms or not. But the males who don't have arms, now you have 4 instead of 1. They get to mate. And their children that are males don't have any arms, they get arrested, or have arms, they get arrested and taken away. So now you have encouraged a trait of no arms throughout the population. Are they superior or inferior to the original purple male?
There's no such thing in this particular case as superior or inferior. If they are able to maintain a population and reproduce, then they have fitness. They are being successful. This is like saying snakes are worse than lizards because they don't have legs. No, snakes are doing great. So all over the world, snakes are doing incredibly well.
I use that as a very specific example, and it requires a very specific answer. You cannot say that the purple males who don't have any arms are superior to the males with arms. Let's say there was a prison break and the laws get broken and we say, you know what, forget it. All the purple males that are now reintroduced back into the population with 2 arms, are they going to be, the women are going to now prefer them because they have 2 arms and they can do things. So then now the 2-arm population is going to take over. So it's
the no-arm population could just do their own thing and then be successful doing their own thing.
You see the leaps in logic you got to have to make evolution true.
But you're literally describing allopatric speciation right now. Like, the thing you're describing is something that happens, and you're just pretending that because they don't have arms, they're worse. Which there are no value judgments in evolution. If you want to know whether or not an organism is doing the game of life correctly or winning at evolution, you just track, does it maintain a population over generations? If the answer is yes, then the answer is yes.
Okay, so you're just going to keep showing us genetic information loss, claiming superiority, and that's how we all got here.
I gave you examples of genetic information being gained, but I got a new one of those.
Duplication is not gain. We'll just have to agree to
it absolutely does, because we already went over this. If you duplicate the information, that's new information. But we've taken E. coli, and we've actually deleted the gene they have for metabolizing lactose. And the bacteria have spontaneously regained the ability to digest lactose after that. So they absolutely, because the gene is just flat out gone. This isn't a case where they just have more resistance to something, or they were able to digest the trait, but now they can just do it in a different kind of environment. This is the lactose metabolizing gene is completely deleted from them. They regain the ability to metabolize lactose afterwards. Absolutely, we would call this gain of function, right? But absolutely new information and a new function in the positive direction.
I took an engine out of my car and then put the engine back in my car, and now it's going to do something new.
Yeah, cars don't evolve.
Yeah, neither did that. You remove the bacteria, and you remove the ability, and it gained back the ability. That's
okay, so I wish I would have asked you this earlier. It's a little unfortunate, but what is the evidence you would have to see in order to accept this? Because I know that's an example of it, and you just hand waved it away.
Yeah, because your DNA.
Hold on, I promise you I'll let you talk, but I don't want to. I want to get through this, and Planet and I have been going at this for a little while, so I'll say something. I'll give him the last word, and then I'll move to you. Okay, is that fair? Okay, so to answer your question about what I would have to see is I would have to see something actually gain information that's actually better instead of showing me examples of losing information. You can't
The-
keep showing me examples of losing information.
The metabolizing lactose is 100% exactly what you asked for.
I'm not aware of that one. I will have to look at it. That's the first time I've ever heard that one.
I'll give you the name of the study.
Sure. Yeah. What's the name of the study? I'll write it down here.
Flipping through my book here. It is called. Oh well, it's from a book. It's called "Why Evolution Is True" by Jerry Coyne.
Okay, so here's what I'll do is I promise you I'll look at that and check it out. But this is my prediction that I'll make. And look, if I'm wrong, I might have to eat crow on it. But the reason why I'll make this prediction, and I'm probably right, is because this happens with every study that they do. This happened with the study that you mentioned earlier that we was talking about, the E. coli bacteria and it doing citrate. When the study first come out, they claimed, oh, this is evolution. Until you actually look at the actual study and you see that they're doing all of these different things through a loss of information, not through a gain. So it's not evolution. So I will take a look at this study, but my prediction right now, it'll be the same as all of the other ones, because every time they come out and claim that this is the new thing that now proves evolution, it almost always, and right now I can't think of a single time when it hasn't been proven that it's actually losing information, not gaining. But I'll take a look at that study. I appreciate the topic, brother. Thank you, sir. I'll give you the last word.
Well, I mean, since this is my last chance, look into, we've taken yeast and forced them to evolve into multicellular organisms as well. So I would take a look in that, because that's obviously a necessary step to go from single-celled to multi-celled. We've done that in the lab.
You got me to bite on that one real quick. I'm sorry, but yeah. So what they've done with that one is and you can look at James Tour. James Tour is the
James Tour.
Is James Tour a
synthetic chemist? Yes, he is. Who knows? He's so ill-informed on evolution.
Yeah,
What does this have to do with yeast becoming multicellular, though?
All right, brother. Have a good one. I appreciate your conversation, man. So, all right, let's move on. Where'd my other guy go? I told you I was going to let you talk, brother, and then you moved out. I was coming up with you, and you moved out. What's up, LT? I see you down there, bro. Did you do your live last night?
Hey, my brother.
Hey, what's going on, man? You doing all right?
Yeah, just real quick. I just want to say something real quick. I'm listening to y'all. I'm a Bible believing Christian. I just want to say that this yeast, he's saying that it can evolve into life. There has not been one document of life comes from life. They have not been able to create life in the
Right. So the
So
thing that he was talking about in yeast, and he had me. I was going to bite on it, but then, he kind of got me when he laughed at James Tour. James Tour is, you don't have to agree with the man at all, but you do have to respect the fact that he is a bona fide chemist. So I mean, you can say that I don't agree with him about evolution, and that's fine. But it's a silly argument to sit there and laugh at it like he's not a respected chemist and probably one of the smartest in his field. I mean, the guy is very intelligent when it comes to chemistry. But so what they've done with this experiment, and he said that they got it into a multicellular organism, and that's not true. They didn't get it into a multicellular organism. And as soon as you have the chemicals, they basically, and I'm not a chemist, so I'm not going to pretend to be, but what they do is they put these chemicals and have this yeast face some kind of chemical threat, basically. And the yeast comes together and create, instead of a singular cell, it has like a colony. And they say, oh, they're working together to face this threat. This is how multicellular evolution happened, because it got together to face a threat, and it was a colony. And so therefore we have our own, that's how it evolved into multicellular. But what they don't tell you is that these chemicals cannot last out in the wild. So James Tour makes a joke and is like, you expected this to be in a prebiotic soup under a rock somewhere. You can't produce this outside of a laboratory. And second, it has to be very controlled. You can't allow in other things like oxygen or anything like this, because it messes up the chemistry and then it doesn't get together. and it only happens in this certain organism. If a deer is facing a threat, or a cow. Let me use the cow because in an example, when a cow is facing a threat, they herd together. Does that make them a multicellular organism? No, it just makes them a bunch of cows hanging together so they don't get killed. And just because a yeast bacteria faces a threat, so they colonize together, does not mean they're multicellular organism. They're still individual organisms that get together because they faced a new threat.
Yeah, I just want to say that life comes from life. They've not able to create it. I mean, I could go on and on about evolution. The main thing about evolution, you could ask this guy. He's been around. I recognize his handle, but the missing link, meaning the transitional forms from the hominids to the great apes, however you want to label them, they have not been able to find that. And that you need to ask them on that. Where is the missing link? The transitional forms between, the monkeys, the mammals to human beings, to the Homo sapiens. They
Right.
cannot
So
find it. They
I don't
cannot find
go.
it.
I don't go with bones. I had this with that
Okay.
discussion earlier, and the reason why is just because it's very simple. You can't prove that that bone of that animal or whatever, like that guy mentioned, the dolphins. That could have been just as easily the end of that line where it had no children. You can't prove that that bone had any children. So you can't use bones and you can't use shapes. If I held up a fork and then a spork and then a spoon and said, look, you see the spoon started off as a spoon. And then here it evolved into a spork and it looks like half spoon and half fork. And then it goes, look here, it totally evolved into a whole fork. I just lined up these things on shape. And if you didn't know a spoon, a spork, and a fork, imagine you never saw those. And I said, look here, it's very simple. It's just a spoon shape. But here it's getting more complex by having these ridges. And then here it's in its final form of evolution to where it has these spikes and now you're able to eat meat from it. So, just lining up things on shapes and then using bones, you cannot use that as proof of evolution. You just can't.
Yes, sir. I got to go, but hey, I'll listen to you. Just keep up the good work. And like I said, these atheists and people are coming out of the woodwork. They really need to. We really need to do something about that because they are actually poisoning America's mind. They
I'm
really
trying
are.
to
So
trying to
God
fight it
bless you,
one person
brother.
at a time.
You're doing great. God bless you, brother.
God bless you, brother. I appreciate you. I wish the other guy that I said he could come up and then he bounced on me. I was going to listen to him. Free, what's going on, man?
Not much. Thanks for having me up. I was
Yes,
just
sir.
scrolling TikTok and your live popped up, so I
Sure.
find the prompt very intriguing.
Okay. Well, what do you believe about evolution, man? You a believer in evolution, or what do you think?
Absolutely. I believe that evolution is true.
Okay. What now? Let me go ahead and put my thing out there so we don't argue over semantics. I believe in microevolution, that you can take a dog kind of animal and breed long hair, short legs, and all these things out of that. But I don't think you're going to get anything other than a dog ever.
So you don't believe that dogs came from wolves in any way?
Yeah, that's microevolution. That's still the same kind of animal, right?
Well, I mean, species wise, they're not the same thing, right? You don't
Yeah,
call a
that's
wolf a dog.
right, but that's just a definition. They're still the same kind. For example, do you know that dogs and wolves can still mate, right? They can they can
Yeah, yeah. So
totally
yeah,
evolve.
I guess that you would say that they're the same species. If you can breed within it, that would mean that they're the same species. I would agree with
They're
you on
still
that.
the same kind of animal. And I say kind. Some people say species. And this is where people kind of get stuck on definitions because I don't know what the original kind was, and they're going to say, well, I don't know what the original species was, and it does get complicated. So I try to tend on these topics for trying to, hey, give me some evidence instead of us getting stuck on definitions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got you. But you don't believe that there's a certain amount of micro changes that could lead to macro changes in evolution?
No, and the reason why is because every time you see microevolution, which is a change within the same kind of animal, right? Every time you see that, it is, I can't think of a single time when it's not information loss. So, say, for example, you have a wolf and then you breed it down to a chihuahua. Which one would you say lost information?
I wouldn't say it lost any information. It just changed the information.
Well, I mean, it
Height
lost.
height was changed, fur color, fur coat, eye color, the dental plan. You're not lose like they didn't lose teeth. They didn't lose. They just altered the
So, can you,
information that was replicated.
I will say, I think you're conflating what macro or what you think macroevolution is. Macroevolution, the way at least if we define it, is just microevolution over time. I think I'm under the impression you think it just happens overnight or it's just a gigantic change out of nowhere.
I'm not under that impression, but this is what evolution is doing. I don't know how much you've seen this, and we'll go back and forth, but this is what they always do. You have macroevolution, which is from a different kind of animal, right? You cannot test or observe that. Nobody's ever seen it. So then you want to use the part that is true, which is microevolution, and then say, see, we can make dogs come from dogs. So therefore, we all come from a single-celled organism. That's a huge leap, brother. That's not just making a statement. That's not true. Now, going back to my other
What's your background again?
it doesn't matter. That's an argument.
It kind of does matter because when you have people in evolutionary,
No, I don't want to mute you. Here's the thing about it.
let
We
me
can
finish
have a
my
back and
sentence,
forth.
man.
But hold on. I know, but listen, bro. Listen, I promise you I'll let you talk. I promise. But here, you come in, you jumped on a question, and then I start addressing you, and then you just jumped all over Free when I was right in the middle of his conversation, and we start to diverge. And I've been on too many panels where they allow that to happen, and the host doesn't control the room, and it turns into a free-for-all. So I would like for you to stay, and I'd like to answer your questions. But I'm going to go back to Free since he was in here first, and I'll address his questions first and not be rude. But going back to my education, either my arguments are sound or they're not. I could be a NASA scientist or a high school dropout idiotic person. Either way, either my arguments are sound or they're not. So if they're not sound, you should be able to destroy them pretty easily and not worry about an argument from authority. I don't have the requisite study material behind this. I didn't get the stamp on the piece of paper, so therefore you're not able to talk about this. This is America. I can talk about it. And if people think it's stupid, then hey, they don't have to stay. Now, Free, going back to yours when I said they lost genetic information. And you said you don't think they lost any information going from a wolf to a chihuahua. Well, then I would ask you, we know that we can take a wolf kind of animal and breed it down to a chihuahua. But can you take a chihuahua, appreciate that, can you take a chihuahua and breed it back to a wolf?
What? You don't think that you could breed chihuahuas with wolves and come
No,
up
no.
with a wolf?
A chihuahua with a wolf, yeah, probably. But my question is you can take two wolves and you can selectively encourage a trait, like the trait for small legs and small noses and all this stuff. I understand that. And you can eventually get down to where you have a chihuahua type animal. Okay. But can you take two chihuahuas and say, okay, I want to get two chihuahuas that are actually the bigger of the chihuahua species and the longer nose, and could you breed it back to a wolf?
I guess I'm not tracking.
Okay, so
I want to make sure I understand what you're
I
saying.
got
So
you, brother.
you think that you could
Chihuahua.
start with two wolves and eventually end up with a chihuahua, but you don't think that you could start with two chihuahuas and end up at a wolf?
You can't, right? You can't take a Chihuahua and breed it. And people have tried this. You can't take once you go so far away from the original, you can't breed it back to it because the information is no longer there. That's what I'm telling you is that microevolution is almost always information loss. It's not.
Where do you get this information from? I'm just curious. Like, how do you arrive at this conclusion?
Well, every observable test that we can see in the evolutionary experiments, to include the bacteria experiments, we see this every time.
So, what information is lost? Because you're saying that the change in height, the change in fur, so you're saying the data changes in a way that can't be changed back. So you're not
Yeah.
losing anything. You're
Well,
just altering the data in a way that can't be altered back.
Then you should be able to breed it back to a wolf, but you can't.
No, I can answer that.
Go ahead.
So it's a misunderstanding of evolution. Mutations create new information. There's gene duplications, regulatory mutations, insertions, de novo genes, chromosomal fusions. The idea that redoing the process can make you go backwards that's just not how evolution works. And to use it as an argument against evolution, it's fallacious. And that's why I ask what your background is.
Can you show me an example of genetic information gain?
Of
Dogs.
genetic information gained. Elaborate.
Okay,
And
so
we'll go against what I said there about the mutation creating new information.
you just that's your statement that a mutation creates new information. So I would say no, a mutation takes existing information and duplicates it. That's not new type information. I'll give you a very specific example.
Duplicates it,
What?
then there wouldn't be change.
Hold on.
That's
don't-
what new
don't they
information
breed
implies.
Cattle.
No, let me give you a very specific example, okay? Maybe this will help us out because, like I said, this is the second part what evolutionists do. First part is they always show you information loss and then claim it that's how we all got here, and we can't if we started off as a single-celled organism, we can't get to a human by losing information. Secondly, they always will then just get you stuck on definitions because they don't want to go past to where we actually start looking at evidence. So let me give you a very specific example. You have E. coli bacteria, or just regular bacteria that became resistant to antibiotics, right? Now, did it gain information in an effort for it to become resistant to the antibiotic?
Yes.
Okay, Waspy, you said yes. What do you think? Lumber?
No, I'm listening. I'm waiting for you to get to the point.
Okay, well, I was just asking you points. So this is an example of loss. So answer your question, Was no, it did not gain information. The resistance predated the antibiotic. It was already in the population. It was
How
predated
can you know
the
that?
existence of the antibiotic.
What?
You're fine, brother.
How can you know that?
Because you can, we've dug up, there's the Itzy caveman or whatever that was frozen, and then we can go to permafrost that's frozen and stuff like on woolly mammoths and things like this, and we can test the bacteria that was dead back then because you can revive bacteria, right? And then you can test it against the bacteria to see if they had the resistance. So the theory.
Are you
goes-
saying resistances have been here and they don't generate? Is that what you're implying?
I'm not implying it. I'm telling you that's a fact. The resistance.
That is not a
predated
fact.
the
No,
antibiotic.
No.
that's silly. And same with the thing about the information loss argument. That's like saying, why can't I get eggs back after I make a cake? I don't think you're understanding how that works. So an argument for not understanding
Before we move
evolution is not an understanding.
Creation. Can I
I don't want to interrupt you, but then we
That's
move on to
crazy.
can I gauge
Okay.
your
Let's
knowledge
see.
on
Hold on,
evolution?
stop. What?
He's gonna mute you if you ask him his education.
I'm gonna mute people. I don't want to kick nobody, and I want to have this conversation. I keep saying it, but I'm not one of them hosts that's going to allow just a bunch of frill, and then nobody gets nothing out of it. So, Lumberjack, I'm not trying to be rude or interrupt you, and you were talking, but I want to stop right here, and we're going to eat this elephant one bite at a time because you made a claim that that's ludicrous, and it's not true. So I want you to Google right now, if you have the ability, does the antibiotic resistant predate the antibiotic? Look that up, and then I'll accept your apology as soon as you Google it. Because I
Say
promise
that again.
did the antibiotic resistance predate the invention of the antibiotic? It did not evolve from facing the antibiotic. It was already here. You claim that I was ludicrous on that. Let's see if I'm right. Since I
No.
don't have
The claim that resistances don't develop and that they've always existed, those are two different things.
I'm going to ask you a very simple question now, so because I want to see if I'm crazy or not. Did the antibiotic resistant predate the invention of the antibiotic?
I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. Resistances still can be created because when we create antibiotics, it's not a singular antibiotic. We don't use the same antibiotic over and over and over. What's happening is there's going to be a general resistance that comes and is created from the more that it gets exposed to it.
So your theory goes, and according to this is the problem with evolution. I got to teach you guys half the time what your own theory believes. And the problem is it keeps changing so much to suit your facts. So the theory goes, an organism or whatever faces a new threat, and because it faces a new threat, it's
Wait, can I have my
tell me
two
what you got.
cents?
Let me hear it. Go ahead. I want to hear what you got to say.
Can I have my 2 cents? So that's okay.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me finish
Okay,
the flow
sorry.
with one check, and I promise you, let's talk. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine, brother. I don't want to rabbit trail too much. It faces a new threat, and then it evolves a mechanism to face that new threat, basically. So the invention of antibiotics, and I was alive when this happened, and this is exactly what they believed. Come on, brother, if you're going to start talking, I'm going to have to, not only am I going to kick you, I'm going to block you, okay? I don't want to do that.
Can I correct you on what you were talking about? Because that is
May
not
let the
correct.
host finish,
You
please.
absolutely can. You can do it in the comments. And if you come up again, I'm going to have to block you. I don't want to do that. But I've already made it very clear that you can do it when it's on your turn. And I've even told you, I promise you, I'll let you talk. So going back to my point, it faces a new threat. It evolves a way around this new threat. And that's what they even believed until they started testing it against stuff that already predated it and realized the resistance was already here. So the bacteria that faced the new threat of antibiotics did not evolve a new method of facing the threat. It just killed all of the bacteria that didn't already have the resistance. The resistance predated the antibiotic.
Okay, can I say my my spiel, please?
Right, I'll let Lumberjack answer that, Slim, and then I won't say nothing else, and then I'll let you talk. Okay?
Okay, very cool.
When you talk about, and I looked into this, and if anything, it's actually the proof of evolution. So when you say antibiotics, as if the things that are in antibiotics were just created by us, and proof of there being antibiotic resistances implies that predates that. Where do you think penicillin comes from?
It comes from mold.
Penicillium fungi, right?
Right. That's a mold, right?
Which predates penicillin. Why do you think there would be resistances for that? And I'll let you answer that question because there is an answer to that.
Well, I kind of wanted to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it. No, Slim Buddy, I don't mind if it's
Okay.
what I'm saying.
I understand the main trajectory of what the host is saying, and I don't think that he's 100% wrong, but it's just the way he looks at it. So I want to move away from bacteria per se and talk about the Field Museum. The Field Museum has a good exhibit called The Evolving Planet, and there's a little cartoon they have for little kids, that talks about natural variation, right? That in many species, let's stick to multicelled organisms, that's a little bit easier to grasp. There's variations, people that are shorter, people that are taller, and variations in and of themselves are not good or bad. It just depends on the situation. But let's say if you were taller than the Ice Age, I think you see this cartoon around the Ice Age portion of the exhibit. If you're taller, you lose more body heat. The taller are more likely to die off. It's not a guarantee, but the shorter are able to be more successful to reproduce. So what you have is you have more shorter and shorter. You have kids with shorter and shorter limbs to retain heat. So that is evolution. However, the natural variation that started this process started before the Ice Age, for example. So I kind of understand what the host is saying, but the thing is there still is an evolution because the population, over time, talking about specifically the Ice Age example, over time, the shorter limbed creatures of the population would increase, and typically over time, their limbs would get shorter as a way to increase their likelihood of survival in extreme environmental conditions.
Glenn, what you've just shown is example of microevolution. I concede everybody in the world believes microevolution. You can test and observe that. That microevolution is never going to get that. If the taller humans that lost heat died out, so only the short humans live. So you encouraged a trait that already existed, the trait of being
Correct,
short.
right.
It already existed. So that's not evolution.
Correct.
You're not going to get any other thing other than a human out of that. You just might get a really short human, but that genetics has a limit, right? I don't know what that limit is, but you're not going to be able to take that human and breed it back to a single-celled organism.
Can I ask you a question?
No matter what you add to it.
Can I ask you a question, host? Do you at least believe in microevolution?
Yeah, I just said, yeah, I believe in
No, I don't know that. I just want to make sure because you said other people. I wasn't sure if you were adding yourself to that collective.
I've conceded that, and I think you just kind of missed it a little bit. Of course, microevolution is true. We can test and observe that, but you're not going to get anything other than the same kind. It's just a trait that existed, and you're encouraging or discouraging a specific trait. It's not new information.
So then, where did eyes come from?
I don't want to make it a religious argument, but obviously the side of that would be design.
Well, I believe in what some might call, I don't know if you've ever heard of the theory theistic evolution, where there is a system of evolution, but it was first designed by an intelligent designer. That's kind of how I view reality. That all these systems, they work on the automatic reflex, like a dam can work by itself, but at some point there was an intelligent designer that first made that dam. That's kind of how I.
All
Yeah.
right, and like I said, I don't want to make it a religious thing, but obviously that's
Oh,
what
I'm
I'm
sorry.
here. That's mainly what I'm here for. Is I try to get people to disbelieve believe in evolution so that they'll come to know Christ, obviously as the Creator. But so, what's your religious viewpoints then?
Well, I'm Caucasian, but I lean towards Native American spirituality. Well, I don't know why it's so funny, but
Did you say you're Caucasian?
no, I was saying I'm a white person, but I lean towards Native American spirituality.
Okay, I'm sorry. I asked you your religion, and when you said I'm a white person, that just made me laugh.
Well, I was want to I always clarify. I don't say Native American spirituality. I don't want people to think I'm claiming to be Native. So maybe I kind of worded that weird. So sorry. Maybe I should have said Native spirituality, but I'm white. Maybe I should have said that first. But
You're fine. It just hit me, man. When I ask somebody their religion, I'm not expecting to hear their skin color.
okay, sorry. That was kind of
Oh, you're
weird way
fine.
for me to word it.
All right, D, you've been sitting up there nice and quiet, brother. What you got?
Hey, so I was just curious on bacteria disproves evolution. How so?
Well, we can have 9 generations of bacteria in a single day, right? Like E. coli bacteria. We've done this I don't know how much you've been listening, but we've done this in the longest running evolutionary experiment of all time. It's been running since I was born, over 40 years. It's had over 80 or 90,000 something generations. So in that amount of time, that's a couple of million years of evolution in humans, right? So
That's
in a
not
couple of
that's not what that means. That's not how that works. You don't look at bacteria and say that's the equivalent of millions of years.
okay, so let me explain
It's
to
still
you.
it's still relative.
So okay, let me show you why it's relative, okay? Because I don't know why I gotta explain it. If you have a monkey type animal and it goes into something other than a monkey kind of animal, human, ape, whatever you want to call it, which is what evolution teaches. Eventually, we all have a common ancestor of a single-celled organism, and you believe that from a complex system like an ape or a monkey type animal, in 70 or 80,000 generations, which we can only have a child once every 9 months, and then we have to wait for that child to mature. In monkeys, it might be 10, 15 years, whatever it is, for that child to mature, for it to have a child, for the traits to be exaggerated. So in 70 or 80,000 generations of a monkey evolution is equivalent to a couple of million years worth of evolution. My point is you can take a simple celled organism like an E. coli bacteria that's not very complex, and you can have the same amount of generations, which would be the same amount of, it would be a couple of million years in our evolution, but in E. coli bacteria, it should be extremely more pronounced because they're so simple that if you see some type of mutation or going off into a different field, you'll be able to see it very quickly. My point is that in human evolution, in a couple of million years, we made these huge leaps, these great leaps in evolution. It must have been on steroids. But in bacteria evolution, it's always worse off.
Wait, are you talking about the E. coli evolution experiment? And are you saying that's against evolution? No biologist is going to tell you that. There is
mean
not
the
a
guys who
single.
did
There's
the
not a
study are not
single.
gonna tell you that?
The long-term evolutionary experiment, right? TLEE, Michigan State. Yeah, there is not one evolutionary biologist who's going to tell you that's against evolution. That's our strongest case. One of the strongest cases for evolution. There's mountains of evidence for evolution. That's not like the singular pillar of evolution. And if you want to talk about humans and chimps, we could talk about the chromosomes. Like you still have to explain that.
Lumber.
And if we can go down that road, right?
Sure,
How would you explain that? If
Hold on, wait a minute.
if the relation between chimpanzees and humans, or at least our ape cousins, isn't real, how do you explain that humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes
Because
and
it's the
there
same.
is a human chromosome 2 fusion of 2 ancestral ape chromosomes?
That's a common design. Do you know that the DNA,
Common design.
the
No.
blueprint for DNA, which is a blueprint for building a body, right? I have a hand that has 4 fingers and a thumb. There's DNA, there's coding within my DNA that tells the body how to build this. Do you know that code in a monkey would almost be identical. Do you know why? Because a monkey has 5 fingers and or 4 fingers and a thumb. So that code is going to look very similar, if not identical. That represents common design, not evolution. Just because that we have a lot of similarities within our genetic code, people never mention all the dissimilarities that we have. That's just as crazy too. So yes, the DNA is going to be it's going to be very similar because we have similar features. You know, the DNA in my DNA and a monkey's DNA for the code to write 2 eyeballs is going to be very similar. The code for writing a nose or a mouth or an ear is going to be very similar, but it's not.
And
going
why
to
do you
be
think there is similar DNA among certain species?
common
That
design? And that's what
by design, that's not what a biologist is going to tell you.
I don't care what they say. You just
I
use an
know
example.
you don't
Said
care what they
evolution.
say.
Yeah,
Because
let me tell
every
you.
time someone wants to talk about a subject on this, whether it's the centromeres in our evolution or fused telomeres or identical sequences to chromosome 12 and 13 amongst apes and us, that can be verification of a familial relation and the advancement of species through change. But you're just going to say it's a similarity in programming. And that's just not how that works. Because you can look at animals and the progression of them and the changes throughout centuries. And it's either you're going to say that doesn't happen or it was created. And there's proof for one and not the other. That's where the argument is going to lie, and that's where it's going to die. People who are educated in the subject are not going to agree with you, and no one ever has. And that's the problem, is when you have a high school education and you go into something not even understand.
Okay, guy, I'm going to mute you because you're monologuing, okay? You're monologuing. I don't
No,
care
I'm
about
not.
your
If you're not going to let me speak, I'm
story.
not going to stay here.
You
You're
can
getting
stay,
cooked in the
but
chat.
you're monologuing, man. I don't care about your insults. I don't. If I have
It's
a
a-
high school education, but let
Who
me tell
said
you
who
about
said
your
that's an
E. coli
insult?
bacteria
Who said that's
experiment.
an insult? It's an observation.
Okay, well let's prove since
In
you
in the
want to.
same way, I'm not going to let someone who knows nothing about cybersecurity try to talk to me about cybersecurity. It's going to be ridiculous, and we've heard that. In the same way, you're not going to hear someone who's a non-geologist talk about how the Earth is flat. You
Dude,
don't give
listen,
people those
you
platforms
are
because they
too
don't
stupid
exist.
to have this conversation with. Shut up and listen, or get off the stage.
I'm
I'm
not
going to tell
too
you how
you
your
know
E.
what a
coli
centromere. What's a
bacteria
centromere?
experiment is absolutely fraud. You said that these are the
You
guys
can
that
be
you
mad
listen
all
to.
you want,
No,
dude.
no one believes these guys. I'm going to show you how this E.
What's
coli
a
bacteria
centromere?
experiment is
Oh,
absolutely stupid. Now you can stay up here, but if I have to mute you again, I'm going to knock you
don't
because your little
get
insults
mad
about
about it, dog. What's a centromere?
you're too stupid to
What's a
have this
centromere?
conversation. Get off my stage. The E. coli bacteria experiment that you talked about, that you brought up, that I showed you, you talking about the longest running evolutionary experiment? They prove this. No, there's not one scientist that showed that. I don't care if all the scientists in the world shows you an example of genetic information loss. It's not evolution. The E. coli bacteria started off being able to eat. Oh, hey, hold on, brother, I got you. The E. coli bacteria. I'm on a rant. The E. coli bacteria started off by being able to swim with its flagellum. It could be able to eat 2 food sources, glucose and citric, in 2 different environments, oxygenated and unoxygenated environment. Because they hand-fed these E. coli bacteria, they lost their flagellum. They can't swim to go get their food anymore. And because it has a genetic switch, which allows the transfer of proteins that allows the food in, changes in the presence of oxygen or no oxygen. That transfer switch, if you will, devolved. So now it eats 1 food source in 2 different environments, oxygen or unoxygenated environment. So you have a wild E. coli bacteria, flagellum, glucose, citric, oxygen, no oxygen. Now the ones in the lab that they're doing their evolutionary experiments on lost their flagellum and lost the ability to eat glucose. It eats citrate and oxygen and no oxygen ability now. It is not gaining information, smart guys. So go keep listening to your stupid scientist. And then tell me how I'm wrong. Don't just keep coming up with, well, you're high school educated, so clearly you don't know what you're talking about. Refute the argument or get the heck off the stage.
Yeah.
D, what you got, brother?
Yeah, I was just asking how bacteria disproves evolution.
Did you get, how'd my rant do? Did that help you any?
Yeah, I don't really know too much about. I mean, I kind of know a bit about evolution, but not too much.
I respect it. But here's what I would tell you to do in the future. When somebody's talking about evolution, you got to demand that they show you how something gained information. If we went from a single-celled organism to a more complex organism, right? Whatever you want that to be, you would have to admit that there has to be some kind of gain there. There has to be information gain. We can't go from a single-celled organism, then keep losing information and become a human, right? So anytime they say evolution, theistic evolution is true, then say, okay, show me one example of genetic information gain. Stop showing me examples of information lost and then claiming that that's evolution, because that's what they're doing.
What do you mean by what do you mean by information gain? Like, what is that?
Okay, so the basic theory goes like this. When an organism faces a new threat, it evolves something new or whatever to face that new threat, right? The fish needed to start, eating on land, or so then you had the load fin fish, and they could walk and get in the shallows, and then they had the ability to crawl on land and breathe oxygen. So it faced a need, and so we would agree if there's no need, then most of the time it doesn't evolve. This is why we still have coelacanth, right? Coelacanth was supposed to be this load fin fish that evolved into something else, but we still have coelacanth. Well, so scientists say they didn't evolve because there wasn't a need for them to evolve. They didn't face a new threat. So basically, an organism faces a threat, and then it evolves a method to combat that threat. So anytime it evolves a method to combat that threat, it needs to do it through information gain, meaning that something wasn't there to begin with. That makes sense?
Right.
Like, for example, I told you the bacteria becoming resistant to antibiotics. It did not evolve the ability to resist it. It was just already in the population. So the only bacteria that's allowed to breed in the scenario are the bacteria that already have the resistance. So they breed and they multiply. So it looks like the population is becoming resistant, but it's not. It's the resistant was already there.
And also, there's a difference between microevolution
Yes.
and macroevolution, which is something that I was starting to argue with the last guy you were having a conversation. I apologize for being so loud, man. But I just cannot resist this arrogant people thinking, avoiding the mathematical impossibility. And they keep believing the same, repeating the same. And just because they did it on the lab in a control experiment, they think that it's going to happen anywhere. And that's so absurd. And you know what? I'm coming from. I'm a civil engineer. I have a bachelor in civil engineer. Then I became a pastor, and I went to Mexico to a seminary, and then I went to Asbury, and there I had a philosophy professor. And the the first question he asked to the class, "Oh, do you understand that evolution is a fact?" What? This is a seminary. This is a conservative seminary. So this illusion of evolution is all around. I have very good. I had a very good argument against him, and he couldn't debate me. But the thing is that he introduced me to this guy who made a study of the genome code or something like that. The genome, where I guess they trace humanity into just one bloodstream. And he said, "Read him." I forgot his name. Read him. He believes in evolution. And then I bought the book, and on the book is just is appeal to sanity, like don't sound ignorance, because if you don't believe in evolution, then people are going to think that you're not educated. What?
Well, it's like the last guy I had up, and then I'm gonna move to Free up there because he's been real quiet and in respect to the stream. So the last guy, as soon as he brought up the cola, or I brought it up, but then as soon as he went into it, he tried to filibuster me because I think he knew where I was going with it. So that's why he lost it. But if you're ever dealing with these arguments, the reason why I like to go to bacteria is because it removes their God of the gaps. Evolutionists has a God of the gaps, and that is called time. Anytime you can't see any type of evolution, it's just, we don't have enough time. Give it enough time and it will. Give it enough time. Well, bacteria, we can legitimately see 300 years of what would be human evolution in a single day with E. coli bacteria. And they're so simple that we should be able to see evolution in real time, and we don't. And like I said, we can have 9 generations in a single day. to get 9 generations in, we usually have about 3 generations in humans in 100 years. It would take that, 300 years in E. coli bacteria, and we never get any greatly evolved E. coli bacteria. Free, you've been sitting up there real patient, man. What you got, brother?
I was just as I was listening, I typed in the chat a couple times, but
I try to
and
pay
correct me if
attention.
I'm wrong, but your argument essentially is since we can't take a tree and make it a seed again, you're disproving that trees grow. You're saying that we can observe the change that happens through evolution, but since we can't reverse engineer the evolution, therefore evolution isn't true.
No, that's not my argument. My argument is, I mean, you could say, I guess it's part of it. If you have, I wouldn't say tree though, not to a seed, because that I would say from one tree back to another tree, not to a seed, because a seed is just an infant version of the same tree. So it would
Right,
be
but
like
since
if
we
we took
can't take like 100-year-old redwood and make it a seed again, like we can't.
a seed is just an infant version of that. That wasn't my argument. So I think you heard the dog argument and said we can take a wolf kind of animal and breed it down to a chihuahua, but we can't take a chihuahua and breed it back to a wolf. That's not saying that you can't take a wolf and breed it back to an infant, which
Well,
is
okay,
a
so
seed is just an infant
in
version of the tree.
I don't mean to interrupt, but in order to breed wolves, you would have to add variations, right? So why wouldn't you be able to take chihuahuas and go back to a wolf? If you have to introduce variations to the wolves, you'd be able to introduce variations to the chihuahuas, and you'd be able to achieve the outcome that you desire by just implementing the variation that you want.
Can they do that? Can they take a chihuahua and breed it back to a wolf?
Has it been attempted? This is beyond my scope of known information. So I would ask, has it been attempted?
I don't know. I have to look at that, but I'm telling you, it can't be.
Well, there's a lot of genes that are turned off, and if you want to do that, you actually need to engineer. So that will not happen by chance.
All right, so this is I've Googled it. I can't find anyone that's actually tried it, but it supports what I said. Even the reason why you can't is because of the information loss, right? So a wolf is the original kind, if you will. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just using that as an example. And we bred it down to a chihuahua. It's inferior to the wolf. Every time we have selected these traits, it's lost other traits, right? And because it's lost these other traits, when it gets down to a chihuahua, it no longer has these traits available. So you can't take a chihuahua and breed it back up to a wolf because those traits no longer exist.
Okay, so I think what you're missing is that you can't take a wolf and get a chihuahua without human intervention or adding variations or variables to the genes that are there. So if you can add variations to the genetics and arrive at a chihuahua, then you could theoretically add the variations that are necessary to go from a chihuahua to a wolf. So
Okay,
it's
why
not
can't
going to happen naturally. You keep saying breeding. So like if you
that
were
would
to
be
put
proof of
wolves with
evolution?
chihuahuas, they're superior in the sense that a wolf is just going to eat a chihuahua and they're going to go extinct if it
I'm
was to
sorry, hold
happen
on.
in nature.
Lumberjack, again, man, sorry, you're not intelligent enough for this conversation. Get the heck off my stage, man. So if that was true, then that would prove evolution, right?
I think that if you could take a chihuahua and add variations, yeah, which I'm pretty sure you can. If you can just add whatever genetic changes you want in the breeding process, you can arrive at pretty much anything.
That sounds good, but it can't. Lumberjack, are you going to make me?
I can prove the macroevolution part.
No,
Let's
you
talk.
can't. You're too stupid to have this conversation. I'm sorry, I didn't told you that. You want to filibuster when I bring up a point that's about to smack you down with your bacteria evolution, and so you're not welcome on the stage. You're welcome to listen, and I'll let you listen. But if you keep popping up, I'm gonna block you. And here we go. I'm gonna have to block you, man, because you're too stupid.
You're a coward.
You're
a coward.
I'm a coward. I
Yeah,
filibuster.
you're a
That's how much
coward.
of a
Look at
coward
you.
I am.
You're
I
scared.
filibuster everybody when they're talking. That's how much of a coward I am. I gave you plenty of opportunity, but you're not smart enough for this conversation. So yeah, if you making a statement, Free, saying that we can do that, but yet nope, we haven't, and we can't. Why can't we see any of these changes in the bacteria when we try this?
I would say, hold on. I would say that,
Let's
like,
talk the
as
long
far
term
as
evolution experiment. Let's talk about it.
Now you don't want to talk. I done tried it. You filibustering.
Hey,
You're too stupid.
how about you have
to
5
this
minutes and I have 5
conversation.
minutes? How about we do that?
I'll
How about
wait.
we what?
If you guys want to do it, I'll go on mute.
I didn't hear what it was. I'm sorry. Say it again.
Oh, I said I can go on mute if you guys want to do 5 minutes each.
No, I had to block him. I don't mind a heated debate. I don't. But when you know that I'm fixing, what he did was, if you noticed, if anybody's listening and watch this, when I kicked him because he knew I was getting ready to use the bacteria against him, then he's went and Googled. That's why he didn't come back for 20 minutes. He went and Googled his best new argument to face it. He could have just faced me like a man the first time and not filibustered, and I would have let him talk. Now, I don't mind a little bit of interrupting because I do that myself to try to keep people on track. But clearly he didn't want to hear it, so he just kept going and going and going. And I politely asked him to stop so I could get him on track, and then he wouldn't. And now he's went and Googled to see what he can find to fight it, and he's lost the ability to have this conversation because all he wants to do is stay with an argument from authority. If I'm not educated in this argument, then it should be pretty easy for you to make me look stupid. And you keep bringing up genetic information loss. So my point is, back to you, Free, is when we do these evolutionary experiments in bacteria, that's what they are trying to do. But they can't bring it up to anything other than a bacteria. And it should be extremely easy. It's actually worst off E. coli bacteria. We should be getting superior E. coli bacteria because we can get 9 generations in a single day.
Yeah. So that's a mutation is always going to be what do you call that?
Neutral or negative?
Yes, it's going to destroy the life. It's going to destroy the functions of any living bacteria. It doesn't show any improvement. It is just it lost functions, and that's it. That's the definition of mutations. And you know what? Even Darwin, he didn't like the idea of calling it evolution because he knew that evolution was impossible. So he wanted to call it what do you call that? Mutation, or there was a name, but he wanted to use the word transmutation.
Yeah.
Transmutation. But
You know, my man LT is in the comments, and he's 100% right. Whenever they try to introduce these changes, Free, like you can look at the fruit fly experiment where they tried to add all of these different types of mutations to these flies, and you'll always get worse off flies. You know, the first time I argued this, and you could probably go back, I think I saved it, but you can go back and look at the videos that I posted. One of the first arguments is that we've done this. We've seen this in fruit flies. We even had one fruit fly, mutate with 4 wings. Well, that fruit fly couldn't fly because it had 4 wings, and the other 2 wings kept getting in the way of the first 2, so we couldn't fly. Another fruit fly mutated to the fact where it didn't even have any wings, so we can't even call that a fly anymore. It's called a walk. So anytime that we try to see these evolutionary gains, it always, always, always produces worse off in the experiment.
I agree.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really have an argument for it because I don't fully understand. I don't have all the information. So when you say it's worse off, so you're saying that something is shutting off genetically, but nothing ever turns on genetically, correct?
I'm saying that it does it through information loss. And like I said, let me give you an example. I forget the scientific term of what they call the little a part that it attaches to. But like, for example, the bacteria that becomes resistant to the antibiotic, all right? The bacteria, the antibiotic is handcuffs, right? And the antibiotic comes in and they handcuff the bacteria, and then they take the bacteria away and they kill them. And so they can't reproduce because they're handcuffed, basically. And obviously I'm oversimplifying this, but the analogy still sticks. So the bacteria is the handcuff, and the E. coli, or I'm talking too fast. The antibiotic is the handcuffs, and it handcuffs the bacteria and kills it, basically. So now you have some bacteria in the population that were born that don't have any arms. They can still mate and they can still reproduce, but the antibiotic can't attach to them because they don't have any arms. So That's not evolution. That's not gaining information. That's losing information. It's not superior, it's inferior. You see my point?
Yeah, I kind of understand what you're saying, but like, how come not? I'm trying to think in relations to humans. Not all parents, like, we're not exact clones. So I'm just curious when it comes to bacteria, when they duplicate, they're not taking from different two sets of different genetics, right? So it's essentially they just duplicate, right? So it's the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
So whatever they come from is they're essentially a clone of.
Basically. But
Right.
still,
So that's a little bit different than human genetics, where we're a combination of our parents' genetics, and that's like just how we reproduce. We evolve through reproduction. Like,
theirs is still reproduction. It's just called asexual. So it's still it's not the same genes. It just well, I mean, I guess you could say it's the same as in far as duplication. But they're two pairs, right? So, but you should still see, because if a single-celled organism or an asexual organism eventually evolved into a sexual organism like ourselves that had to have two different individuals, it still doesn't negate the fact that you should still see these changes extremely easily, because you have so many generations in a single day. You should
right,
still
but
be
then
able to map these evolutionary gains.
and my argument to that would be is what environmental and dietary changes are taking place to alter the genetic code. Because if you have the letter A, and that letter can reproduce itself, it's going to be essentially a clone of itself, because there's no introduction of a variation. So you're just going to continue to repeat itself over and over and over again. And if you can see a change at all through the duplication or the cloning process of asexual reproduction, then that would be proof of evolution, because there's alterations to essentially what is supposed to be exactly the same.
Well, I would encourage you to go look and see what alterations that they're making these E. coli bacteria face within the lab. But again, the point's still the same. Even if whatever direction you want it to go, my point is it's not going anywhere. It's actually going backwards. It's not going forwards. You're getting worse off E. coli bacteria, not better.
And okay, so is there a loss of genetic code,
There's a loss
or
of
is it
genetic.
just genes being turned off?
No, there's actually a loss, like I said, in some of these cases. Now, I did mention that they lost their flagellum. If I'm not mistaken, see, what they do in this E. coli bacteria is they freeze it every night, and then they have every generation that they have stuck in a cooler. So if they have such a genetic loss to where the E. coli bacteria can't survive anymore, then they can actually go back into generations and revive and start from the middle and not have to start from the beginning. So they may have restarted with a new generation of E. coli bacteria that has their flagellum, but you can read this in the papers that they've produced. The E. coli bacteria lost their flagellum. So the flagellum is on the back of an E. coli bacteria. Think of it like a tic tac with a tail, right? Like a sperm. It has a head and then it has a tail. The flagellum is like a little motor with a hair on it that allows it to spin, and this allows the E. coli bacteria to swim forward, so that it can basically hunt for its food, either citrate or glucose. But it actually lost that in the lab because they were spoon feeding these things. They didn't have to go out and hunt anymore, so they lost their flagellum. And then everybody goes, well, see, that's evolving. It didn't need that flagellum, so it lost it because it didn't need it. And I'm telling you, that's great, but you can't that's not going to turn into a human by losing information. Stop showing me examples of information lost and then claiming that's how we all got here. And the reason why you'll see them fight so hard, like the man I was talking to earlier, the reason they fight so hard over this is because it is a religious viewpoint. You can't test this, you can't observe this, but they will make sure that this is part of their science. This is their religious viewpoint. You can have all the faith in the world that all the people in the world come from single-celled organisms, or that we come from microevolution. You can have that faith, whatever you want, but it's not part of science. You can't test it. You can't observe it. And when we have tested it, we have proven that it is worse off. It's not better. Stop showing me genetic information lost and then claiming that's how we got here. And that goes back to my silly little statement that I did earlier. Teacher, how did we all get here? Well, Johnny, we all started off as a single-celled organism. And then what happened? We all lost the genetic information, and that's why we're here. Doesn't work.
Okay. You did say some things that were kind of interesting to me, and you said that that there has been a regression based on the environment, and it's like they no longer have to hunt because they're spoon fed. And I would almost go as far to say that that lack of natural pressure to survive is the reason for the regression, but we can at least come to the conclusion that there was a change that occurs, and we can't perfectly simulate what it would be like for these natural or these living organisms to have to survive where there's natural pressure to survive in nature, right? Which is going to force the change more rapidly, because if you don't evolve with the constant changes of the environment in nature, then you're going to die off. So they're going to have to change much more quickly, where when you're in a lab, the environment doesn't change that much. Therefore, it's going to lead to regression. And I would say that even though it does show regression, it does show that evolution does change. And it also proves that the lack of natural pressure to survive leads to a regressive evolution.
Why did it start eating citrate in an oxygenated environment when it was getting spoon-fed glucose? Why did it start eating citrate in an oxygenated environment?
To be honest with you, I have to look into that.
May I
don't
show
know
my
enough.
screenshot, please?
In 1 second, brother. I'll get to you. That I don't want to. I want to
I'm
have
gonna have to look into
Appreciate it. I
that. I
apologize.
can't even attempt to answer that question. I don't
Well,
know.
I apologize.
That's the point. You can make it face all these new threats, and you might get mutations, but it'll almost always be through genetic information loss, not gain. And so, even though that they were spoon feeding this thing glucose, it started eating citrate. But again, it did not do it through information gain. It did it because the genetic switch had devolved, and now it can only eat citrate in an oxygenated environment. And I don't know if they actually went back and got more that can now eat glucose. I'm not sure of that. But yeah, I just encourage you to look at that, brother. Go ahead. Let's see. Go ahead, Wild Man. You're muted up.
Oh, peace to the panel. How's everybody going? My name is Malik. What's up? I found the prompt on the screen very interesting, so I did a quick search, and maybe you can adjust the screen so everybody can see it. But yeah, this is a quick little explanation as a little what your screen says. So I decided to look it up, and it actually provides a strong evidence for it. But for everybody to read, I don't want to be long-winded. I'm trying to do two different things at once. But it's a byproduct, not a byproduct. Yeah, you kind of say a byproduct or a part of evolution in a way. It doesn't debunk evolution. Evolutionists and people in the biomedical field actually speak on bacteria a lot. There's a lot of lectures on it actually too, as of recently, over the last year or so.
All right, let's get into it. Show me what you got.
Oh, if you guys wanted to read, but I mean I can read it out loud. But
Yeah, tell me what it says.
it's a little cut off on my side. I don't know. I'm new to the whole screenshot thing or whatever the case. I don't know if you know how to adjust
Yeah,
it. I was on another panel that did
I
before.
can't bring in the edges any more than what it is. So just go ahead and read it and tell us what it is.
It's a little cut off on my side. That's weird. Hold on 1 second. Let me try a different way. Hold on. You can bring somebody else up while I adjust the.
You can read it, brother. I'm not gonna disagree
Yeah, I
with
just
you.
don't want to be cut off from the screen. That's it. Not that it's your fault, but
You're fine. I'm gonna make a prediction though. Is you're gonna show me an example of information loss and then still claim that this is evolution. That's my.
say that last part one more time.
I'm telling the people in the thing here. I'm going to make a prediction, and my prediction is that whatever you're about to read is probably going to show us information loss and still claim that it's evolution.
What do you mean by information lost?
I mean, it's not gaining information; it's losing it. You can't be handcuffed if you don't have any arms. So
A
therefore, we need
bacteria
laws.
cell is losing what? Rephrase it one more time. I'm sorry.
Okay. And hey guys, I'm gonna deal with the guys.
You can
that
take
we-
me off the big screen. Yeah.
I got you. I'm gonna deal with the guys on the panel, but just so nobody thinks I'm running, I'm gonna have to bounce out of here after this right here. So I'm gonna deal with the guys that we got on the panel, but I'm not gonna accept anybody else that might be coming up. So I hope nobody
Yeah,
takes.
I'm gonna screenshot it and then put it in, try and see if that works, so I can just read it all the way through. You can put somebody else on the screen.
I got you.
I'm gonna mute out.
I got you. So I'm talking about you're probably going to say this, whatever you're going to read is probably going to be information loss and not gain. And an example of information loss would be humans faced a threat of handcuffs. We lost our arms, so therefore we evolved a way to face the threat of handcuffs. That's what evolution does. Not one time, not two times, but every dang time they show you an example of information loss and then claim that it's evolution.
Hey, I just want to say thank you for the conversation. It was a great convo. I'm
Yes,
gonna head
sir.
out. I appreciate it though.
All right, yes, sir. Hey, Free, let me ask you one thing, man. Are you a religious person? You believe in God?
I was raised religious. I have come to the conclusion that I can't say that I believe in God.
Well, here, look at these videos, man, and get to it. And I hopefully, once you realize that this is a big crock, hopefully it'll bring you back to the religion. Okay, man?
Yep. Yeah. Have a good day.
I'll be praying for you. Have a good one, man. All right. Gringo, what you got, man?
Hey, what's up? Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
I've only been listening for like 10 or 15 minutes, so but I think I kind of get your stance on it. Could you define for me what you think evolution is?
Well, that depends, and this is why I said earlier. This is what most when you're debating evolutionists, they will stick to you on specific terms and definitions. So just the word evolution means change over time.
Right. So I would say it's the genetic change over time of any population. So how does the bacteria disprove evolution if you're saying they do change over time, but they're quote unquote devolving? Wouldn't devolving, in your words, still be evolution though?
See, that's what you guys, and I'm not. When I say you guys, don't take it. I'm not throwing rocks at you, but unfortunately, you're doing exactly what I say they do. You're fighting so hard to show that something losing information is still evolution. So let me ask you this: we would agree. Would you agree? Not we would agree. Would you agree that a single-celled organism is the simplest form of life?
I agree, yeah.
Okay. And for that single-celled organism to eventually go into a dog, it would have to have genetic information gain. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so out of all of those billions or trillions or quadrillions of genetic information gains, show me one. Show me one. And I'm telling you that we can see this in bacteria. We never get it. We always get information loss, not gain.
I would disagree. You never see information gain. Have you heard of horizontal gene transfer?
This is you're going back to this the information that was already there and it duplicating.
Right. So, but any new information is purely from mutations.
Okay, but I mean, we got to have something that's, you can say, well, I got this engine out of the car and put this other engine in. You didn't create anything new. It's still, the transfer of it's a duplication of the same gene. If a single
Right,
cell
but let's say
organism eventually goes into a dog, it's going to have a whole lot of new stuff. It can't just keep copying a single cell. You can copy a single cell 65 million, billion, trillion times, and you're not going to get a dog out of that.
right, but there's a certain rate of mutation that occurs such that with so much time there will be a lot more new genetic information added.
And there's
I know you're going to say, oh, God of the gaps, time.
There it is.
But that's how populations evolve. There is a set genetic variance, and those who are fit enough to reproduce carry those genes on. That is what evolution is.
Why is it in a multicellular organism, in a million years of evolution, we had these drastic changes from a caveman, Neanderthal, monkey type guy to a human? All of these changes you can see, millions and millions of these changes that had to be from generation to generation to get where we are now in 70 or 80,000 human generations. Why is it in the same amount of generations in single-celled organisms to where we should be able to see a lot more variation, we never see it?
Well, I think we're just fundamentally very different from bacteria.
Yeah, but
I mean, you're not
bacteria
going
is
to
so
give bacteria the same amount of time for evolution and not always end up with a human like that. Well,
granted,
plus
but we
the
should end up
bacteria
with
right now
something.
is a lot different than ancient bacteria.
We should end up with something, brother. We should end up with something. And we're
No,
not.
you don't have to. Why would you have to?
So
If it's
every
good enough for the environment, it'll survive.
so evolution just stops.
No, evolution is always going, but I think there's a big misconception where people, with the phrase survival of the fittest, it's not the fittest, it's the fit enough.
I believe in
Like, if you're a
Newton's
piece of shit and you're not good at much, but you have a kid, you succeeded in life biologically.
Agreed. Agreed. But I still don't go back to my point of evolution. If we had all of these changes and all of these different variations and everything, we should be able to see, we should be able to test, and which they are. I mean, they've done this experiment because they're expecting to prove it. But so far, in 80, 90,000 generations, they're getting worse off bacteria. They're not getting anything to quote unquote evolve. The only changes that we see are through loss, not gain. Why can't we see some type of gain?
I mean,
That's
I'm
my
sure
point.
there are. I mean, I don't know specific experiments like that, but I guarantee that if you keep doing it, there will be a mutation that is beneficial to it, and
Well,
it'll
that
spread
is
through the
a
population.
that is a great faith-based argument. If we just keep doing it, eventually it'll happen. I mean, I don't have that kind of faith, but I appreciate you having it. But I don't have that kind of faith. There's no evidence in that statement other than you just saying, well, even though we can't prove the theory, even though we can't test the theory, and even when we do test and try to prove the theory, we get the exact opposite results. But I still believe.
Yeah, I can't speak on it because I don't know the details of that experiment you're talking about. But what were you saying earlier about antibiotics? I kind of missed that part.
I was talking about how people, when this first come out, matter of fact, who was it, Richard Dawkins or one of them come out and said this is the greatest evidence of evolution that they've ever seen, was the antibiotics becoming resistant to the bacteria becoming resistant to antibiotics, if I can talk.
Mm-hmm.
So they said that's the single greatest evidence of evolution, was the fact that these bacteria are becoming resistant to antibiotics. The problem is the resistance predated the antibiotic, and we've now figured out that it's actually doing it through loss and not gain.
Do you know what like antibiotics are, like where they came from?
Bacteria, like a mold or something, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's just different microorganisms. They release, they call them secondary metabolites because it's not necessary for them to function, but they release those into the environment and it inhibits growth of their competitors. So it gives them a gain of fitness, right? And so those genes responsible for it can transfer to completely different species of bacteria through horizontal gene transfer. And that there is evolution. It's not a loss. It doesn't matter that it wasn't a pure mutation that predated whatever. You're gaining a gene that it previously did not have.
How do you know that the bacteria did this horizontal transfer in this new bacteria that was frozen in permafrost when we weren't there to know what the original had? That's guesswork, man. That's just 100. You're just surmising that. What we do know for a fact.
What are you talking about?
The antibiotic resistance predated the antibiotic. Now, if you want to say that come from another, this evolutionary transfer, horizontal transfer, I'm saying that you can't know that you might be able to observe. Maybe you say, look, we can observe that here in this lab on this one. You don't know that that's where the antibiotic resistance come from. You don't know where the parent material's at. You can't know that because we know that it predated it. So the parent material could be anywhere in the world at any given time. So you don't know where it originated to say that it did this horizontal transfer.
Well, let's say you take a bacteria that you know has a gene for resistance
Already has it.
and you
Okay.
transfer it.
So
Well,
you
okay,
take so you
there's
take something that
already a
already
genetic
exists.
variance. Well, yeah, sure, they had a natural resistance already to whatever the molecule was, or the molecule wasn't effective against that one.
So Gringo, I really want people to focus on what they're saying, man. I really want, and I'm not trying to be a punk or be mean or condescending, but do you see how you just said we got to take a trait that already existed and then maybe we can move it over there? If I take the engine out of my Ford pickup truck and put it into my Chevy pickup truck, has my Chevy pickup truck now evolved?
It
No.
has, because
No,
it
it
has
hasn't.
different information.
It
That's the definition of evolution. That's what it is.
That's why I said a lot of these guys want to get stuck on definitions. So they want to take microevolution and say, hey, I can take a dog and breed it down to, or I can take a wolf kind of animal and I can breed it down to a chihuahua. Can't you Christians? Y'all can see that, right? Yeah, we can see that. Therefore, we all come from a dot 65 million billion trillion years ago, you stupid Christians. No, you're making a leap, man.
Host, is
I'm
an
not I'm
F-150
not
the
allowed.
same
Hold
as
on.
an F-250, and why is it different?
Hold on. I'm not. I appreciate it, man, and I don't want you to think I'm running. But I already told these guys that I got to bounce, and this is going to be the last conversation that I had up. So I appreciate it. I don't want you to think I'm running, but I do gotta knock out of here. And I wish you could have come up earlier so I could address whatever question you had. All right, brother. So you see, Gringo, how you're starting out with all of this stuff, and then you're claiming evolution. You already got it. It's already here, man. It's not evolving. It's already there. It's right there. You can't. And this trait of horizontal transfer, it was already there. It already happened. I could say that's design as much as it. You say evolution, I say it's design. God wrote this in the genetic code so that they would have this ability to fight threats. It was already there from the very first one. It did not evolve to have it. And if you say that, that's fine, but you got to show it to them. Can't just make the claim.
Okay. Have you heard of the change in color of moths in I believe it was London?
Yeah,
right.
it's called.
You're familiar?
It's the pepper moth. So what happened was these moths had a pepper moth has it's white with black specks in it. And then what happened is this town had like a coal mine place in it where they burnt coal, and then the soot got all over everything. And because the moth's wings or whatever would pick up this soot, they stood out against the background so the birds would eat the white moths. So then what happened was the scientists started noticing that the peppered moths went from a white moth wing that had black spots in it to pretty much a black wing with little white spots in it, and then if I'm not mistaken to a total black wing. And they come out and they screamed, "This is evolution, we've proved it, we've seen it, they faced a threat and they got it." Well, no, it's no different than microevolution, because what happened is the moths with the most black in their wings were able to hide so they didn't get killed. The birds ate all of the ones with the white, right? So the only ones that were allowed to reproduce were the ones with the black. So when they reproduced, their children had white and black, and the ones that had the white got eaten by the birds. So the only ones allowed to reproduce were the black. So now you're encouraging the trait of black in the wings. Was black in the wings before? Yes, absolutely. It's no different than the melanin in our skin, right? Skin color is nothing more than melanin. It's like, black people, white people, Asian people, we're no different from each other genetically, but it's the amount of melanin that we have in our skin that gives us a skin color. I still have melanin, I just don't have as much melanin as a black person. And a black person still has melanin, they just have more melanin than a white person. So there wasn't no invention of this melanin trait. It pre-existed, it's just that some traits got encouraged while other traits got discouraged. So the peppered moth, they no longer use this as evidence for evolution because they've realized the trait already existed. Black in their wings was already there.
So you think for evolution, for an example of evolution, you necessarily have to have a new trait?
You absolutely have. We already agreed with that. If we went from a single-celled organism to something other than a single-celled organism, you absolutely have to have some type of information gain.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I just fundamentally disagree with that. And I guess we're not going to come to any middle ground on it, so.
You fundamentally disagree that a single-celled organism eventually mutated into a dog, but it doesn't have to have any information gain in it? You fundamentally disagree with that?
No, I disagree with, for evolution to occur, there has to be a new trait added.
Then how did we go from a single-celled organism? This is what I'm talking about. You guys want to stick so hard with what we can observe, which is traits that already existed. You hold on to that like faith, like I hold on to the Bible. I admit mine's a faith. I hold on to Jesus and I'm not letting him go. You guys hold on to that and you're not letting it go. No matter how much it spits in your face and says you have it to go from a single-celled organism to a dog, you have to have trillions or billions and trillions of different information gained. But because we can't see any of it in any type of evolutionary experiment we do, we're just going to believe it blindly. The difference between my faith and your faith is my faith is defined as the faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. People may disagree, but I have evidence for my faith. I might not have enough evidence to convince someone else, but I have enough evidence for my faith. The difference between evolution is they have no evidence for their faith, but yet they still believe it. I'll let you have the last word, brother. I appreciate the conversation. I don't want to seem like I was jabbing it. The reason why I do this is because I want people to disprove evolution. I want to disprove evolution so they might think, well, if evolution is not true, then what is true? And then, in my hopes in that is that they'll get rid of this religion of evolution and they'll see that God designed it. And then when they come to God, they'll come to know Jesus. That's my ultimate, that's why I'm doing this. I appreciate the conversation, brother. You've been very respectful. It's been a great conversation with you. And I'll give you the last word, Gringo.
Yeah, thanks for the convo. This is my first time ever doing this, so don't really have any experience with debates or whatever. But I think we just fundamentally disagree on some things about what exactly would determine evolution is. But appreciate you being respectful and let you have a good day.
I hope you do the same, brother. I'll be praying for you to come to know Jesus. All right, brother. My man on the end down there, you said you was going to, I'll give you an opportunity, but if not, I'm going to have to bounce out of here. Going once. Going twice. So I'm going to knock you out of here. Yeah, everybody, just kind of to sum it up, this is what evolutionists do, man. They hold on. Not everybody's, I was able to have a conversation with Gringo there. He was able to walk. Hopefully I planted a seed. He didn't agree at the end, but it's better than the conversation that I had with the Lone Wolf or whatever his name was. I forget now, Chopping Wood or whatever his name was, to where they come in here and they do an argument from authority. Well, you're not a scientist, so you can't talk about this subject, and you're an idiot. That's not an argument. That's not an argument. But yeah. Anyway, until next time, God bless, and